So before we get into reaction content, I wanted to talk about a different topic, and that is that this is something that I've been thinking about over the last couple of days, and I think I've talked about it a couple of times on stream, but really just wanted to sit down and have this discussion a little bit, and that is the simple fact that with the current way that MMOs in general are being developed, it's going to be near impossible to really have that experience that people had back in the day when they played like a World of Warcraft for the first time or whatever happened to be your first MMO for the first time. It's going to be very close to impossible to having that experience. Now, some of you guys might say, well, a big reason because of that is because of the internet, but that's not... I mean, because MMOs, they came around, internet was already around. It's just there wasn't as much of a market in like making sites like Wowhead and stuff like that, right? And that's not the only reason, but the biggest reason nowadays is that every single MMO that comes out has a beta, an alpha, which usually includes most of the content of the MMO itself. Or in the case of World of Warcraft, you have like a PTR, even though they seem to be avoiding to reveal as much on the PTR, finally, which was about damn time. But you're not really going to be able to capture lightning in the bottle ever again. Like the experience that people had back in 2004 is just not going to happen. I kind of feel like the main reasoning because of that is those betas and, you know, how do we fix that? It's just there needs to be better QA as opposed to counting on the community to do QA and provide feedback. And I know that this isn't even a problem for a lot of people, but I feel like the problem is felt a couple of months after the MMO comes out. That's when the problem is actually felt. And, you know, so the reason why this type of stuff happens, right? Why the game is essentially figured out before it even comes out. The reasoning behind that is because right now there's a whole industry behind it. There's a whole industry of people that want to do guides, that want to provide you with a database, that want to tell you every single thing there is to know about the game as fast as humanly possible before the game even comes out. I've talked about this in the main channel, the whole joy of discovery thing. Now I'm just putting more of an MMO context into it. But I feel that the lack of discovery kills interest for a lot of players. Because what ends up happening when there's no discovery, like let's take New World as an example. Before New World came out, they came out with like a beta or an alpha, whatever, which had most of the content, if not all of the content that launched in the base game. And so most of the people played through the game during the alpha period. They played an ungodly amount of hours, and then the game came out and they played through the same game again. The difference is this time they knew where they had to go, what they had to do, where the resources they wanted were, how to level up, how to do... They know all of these things. Most of the people had even done guides for it by the time the game came out. They were like full-on guides, how to level the fastest, where to get this gear, where to get that gear, most efficient way of farming, X, Y, Z. Like all of that stuff was already done. And then you have two aspects here, right? Which is the players that, you know, that are super interested in the MMO, they're going to engage in the system twice, right? They'll go through the beta or the alpha or the PTR, what have you. They go through it because they're super invested. They're like, oh, I have to know exactly what the thing is that I'm going to be able to do, that I'm going to want to do. I have to know everything. I need to know all of the information so that when the game comes out, I know exactly how to go from A to B to Z to get everything faster than everybody else. It's a race and I have to win. So these are the players that are deeply invested in an MMO. This is kind of how they're going to play it. Then there are the players that, while they are invested in the MMO, they're also interested in experiencing the discovery aspect of it, and they don't want to play through the game twice because it's not as interesting. So you have these two very distinct type of players, and they are going to clash when the game actually comes out. So, for instance, if you guys want to know, I identify myself on the latter one, being someone who I don't want to play betas or PTRs or any of this. Like, I'll play them sometimes for content and whatnot, but if I had the choice as a consumer, purely from a consumer standpoint, purely from a gamer standpoint, I would rather not play alphas, betas, whatever, just experience the final product. That would be my choice 100 times out of 10. And when eventually the product launches, you have those players that know all the information. They're just like zoom, super fast. They have a clear, distinct advantage because they looked up the information. They clearly don't care about the sense of discovery or whatever. They're just like, no, I need to min-max, super optimize, go, get to the end game as fast as humanly possible. They basically skip the leveling portion of the game, essentially, because they've done it once to figure out how to do it in the most efficient way humanly possible. Maybe make guides about it and whatever. Boom, zoom. And then you have the players that are actively trying to discover the game. So what ends up happening, these two players are going to clash, these two types of players, because, you know, there's nothing left to discover most of the times, because the players that came before, they already discovered everything, they're doing everything, exploiting everything. And then eventually by the time that the regular player gets to like the later stages of the game, he's going to be wondering, well, how can I go make money? And everybody's already exploiting the best possible ways to make money. How can I get this material? Everybody's already exploiting the best possible routes to everything to get material X. How can I go to X, Y, or Z? And there's just nothing to discover. The game's figured out. It was figured out before it even came out because of betas, alphas, PTRs, whatever. It was already figured out. Which kind of sucks, if you really think about it. So those players that wanted to experience the sense of discovery, they might have experienced it for a little bit. Then eventually when they get the end game, it's like, okay, so now this whole thing is figured out. Like this dungeon's figured out. This boss is figured out. And now I have to go watch a video. This happens even in 14. Like players that take their pace, by the time that they get to the harder raids and extremes and whatnot, if they try to go through Party Finder, which is a tool to matchmake players, essentially, in the description of the Party Finder, lots of times people are like, okay, we're using this strategy, watch this video, and you're like, I wanted to kind of figure it out, experiment, try to see the mechanics and try to interpret them, because that's kind of like, you know, the way that the game is intended to be experienced. And I just feel like we're never going to have this experience again. It's going to be very hard for us to ever capitalize on this, if ever it even happens again, simply due to the fact that this is it. This is always going to be the way that it's going to work. Somebody's always going to play the game for an ungodly amount of time, figure everything out. Most times, even before the game comes out, how can we kind of fix this? I feel like one of the things is, first, you can't have betas or alphas or any of that. You can't do it. You can't do it because the world's going to be figured out. People need to have the wow moment in the game. And I feel like this is not just for MMOs. I feel every game needs to have a moment where the players go, whoa, right? I feel like every game should have that moment where you feel like you're watching something, you're experiencing something that is unique, that swept you off your feet, that blew you away. And that can't happen with all of these alphas, betas, PTRs. There's just no surprise, no discoverability. Companies are going to have to invest more and more, I feel, in QA to be able to test this on a larger scale in order to be able to provide players with these more unique experiences. Otherwise, they're just not going to be able to do it. And games are going to come out. And if you look at New World, it came out, it was figured out. People played it for a couple of months. Boom, done, whatever. And yeah, there were a lot of problems with New World. 1,000% agreed. I 1,000% agree. There were many more problems besides the fact that the game was figured out. But I feel like the game already being figured out is a big aspect that turns a lot of people off. I feel like in a lot of ways, it might be the same thing with Lost Ark, even though I believe Lost Ark is still going strong because it's got that Gamba addiction thing going on. People are still addicted to it. But Lost Ark was also a game that essentially when it came to the West, it was already figured out. Players already knew what they could expect. The only problem was that Amazon, despite the fact that they said, we're going to make it less pay to win, as far as my limited understanding, because I haven't really been following Lost Ark as much, they ended up making it more pay to win than it was in Korea. It's just like, what? Is this experience localized to only MMORPGs? No. It can be expanded to any game. It's just I'm giving you guys the context of it from an MMORPG, because if you look at other games, you can kind of play them offline in a way. You can choose to avoid social media and all of this stuff, and you can play them solo depending on how soloable a game is, right? But you can kind of play it by yourself and just experience that discovery for yourself. So other games can be less impacted by it, but they still do get impacted. For instance, I'm pretty sure that a lot of people got way too many things spoiled for them in Elden Ring. Like if you would go to YouTube, there were just tons and tons of spoilery thumbnails with bosses, spoilery thumbnails with items, all kinds of spoilers straight up in thumbnails. Like you can't even avoid it, in titles everywhere. And, you know, that's why I never watch videos on games I'm thinking of playing. Yeah, but when you look at an MMO, right, it's kind of hard not to try to stay up to date with what's going to be happening in an MMO. If you're playing, say, for instance, Ashes of Creation or whatever, I'm pretty sure that by the time that game comes out, it'll most likely be a figured out game, because through all of the alphas and betas that they're going to be doing along the way, unless they choose to not do them, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they're definitely going to do alphas and betas along the way, and by the time it comes out, it's going to be kind of like a New World situation where the game's already figured out. It's going to be figured out before it even comes out. Especially since MMORPGs are community games, you want to be involved with content creators and communities. Yeah, content creators like myself, we're actually a part of the problem. We're actually a part of the problem. I 100% believe this. Because, you know, if I was going to go ham on MMO, which I'm not really going ham, so to speak, right now, I'm playing mostly 14, right? And I might play Dragonflight when it comes out. If I was to go ham, I'd be pumping out content from betas, alphas, all of this stuff, and essentially spoiling and already being more informed of most mechanics than people who don't play those alphas and betas and whatnot and already know. Like if you look at Shadowlands, for instance, right? Q played Shadowlands. He used Zygor, and there was already a database of all of the quests, which quests give the most EXP, how to get to max level as fast as humanly possible, and which quests to do, which quests to skip. And I feel like that level of optimization is essentially what kills immersion when it comes to MMORPGs. It just straight up kills it. Because you're not really immersed. You're following an arrow. You're just like just going through the arrow, doing the quest as fast as possible, getting to max level, effectively skipping the leveling experience altogether, just like skipping it in favor of just getting to the end game so that you can go do world quests and dailies. Makes it feel like a job, yeah. Like I remember when I played Wrath of the Lich King and I just went through the zones and really soaked it in. Like I took a week off work, didn't use any guides whatsoever. We're just going through, trying to figure out these quests, soaking in the world, and it was such a more rewarding experience. There weren't as many spoilers back then. Shit wasn't getting data mined left and right because, data miners also make it even worse. Like they data mine cinematic cutscenes before the story's even ready to be told, which, to be honest, in the case of World of Warcraft, it's whatever really, because not even Blizzard respects their storytelling, right? Hey Banshee, how you doing? So it just makes me a little bit sad, and I wish that there was more, there was more of a community aspect to protecting people. Even just like, I wish people as a community would be more willing to just not only not spoil others, but also not spoil themselves so that everybody could actually go into an MMO completely fresh, which is never going to happen. Like this is just a thing that is never going to happen ever again. It's a completely dead and gone dream, right? But it's just something that I've been thinking about a lot. Is would there ever really be another? Wow, this was amazing to discover this thing. No, because everything's figured out from the get go. It's a little bit sad.